Hello and welcome. In this video, you will learn how I oil, wax, and care for my wood cutting boards. Welcome in. If you are new here, my name is Jerry Hagee. I live in southern Alberta with my 4 children and my husband, and we have this beautiful wood cutting board. It's made of maple, and it is just the centerpiece of our kitchen. I refused to put a sink or a kitchen appliance in it because I really just wanted it to be a nice flat surface where we could prepare food and gather. And I'm going to be oiling this island with this Clark's cutting board oil. I really love this oil. It soaks in just so well, and so that by the next day I can lay a piece of paper on the island and it doesn't soak up any of the oil. It's very nice. So the quick rundown of this video is going to be to wash the cutting board with hot soapy water, to let it dry completely, to oil it, and then to add a wax to help seal the oil. So that's the short version. If you're in a hurry, that's what you need to know. So first, you wash it with hot soapy water and a soft rag. I just use dish soap on a dishwater to wash it. You make sure you do not soak it in water. We don't want to put small cutting boards in the water because it might cause warping and cracking. And also don't leave wet rags on a wood surface overnight or anything. Cutting boards can be a little high maintenance, especially wood ones, and we want to make sure we don't allow for bacteria to grow. And so I recommend not cutting raw meat on your wood cutting surfaces and using a plastic cutting board for that kind of stuff. So I use my wood ones for cutting fruit, vegetables, breads, those types of food. And then, if I have any raw meats, then I use a plastic cutting board. Or if you have a glass one or something like that, that's cool too. So if you do have a cutting board and you need to disinfect it because of whatever reason, you can use a weak solution of bleach or hydrogen peroxide. You just want to have it very diluted so that, because it will dry out the wood is the problem. So if you do find that your wood is looking a little dry, then it will soak in water really easy. Whereas the water will just kind of bead on top if it is well oiled and waxed. So now that you've washed your cutting board, you've allowed it to dry, now you're going to start oiling like I was doing in the beginning of this video. My number one tip here is to use a food grade oil and to make sure that it is not prone to rancidity. So there are special ones like this Clark mixture. It's very lovely, and I find that it's a reasonable price. It lasts me for a long time. And then also there's other types here. It's not just Clark's. There's many other types of cutting board oils and waxes that you can purchase. And usually they are found in hardware stores or something like that. Online, I usually buy mine from Amazon. And I find that Clark's has a nice lemon scent, so I love that. If you're washing your cutting board and you notice it smells very oniony or maybe radish kind of smells, some foods are a little smellier than others. You can help to deodorize it by using a nice coarse salt and some lemon juice, and that you just mix it up, make it kind of a little bit of a paste, kind of rub that in, and then just wipe it off with a damp cloth. And then you let it dry, and you can oil it, and it will be smelling lovely again. And if you find that your cutting board has a stain on it and you want to try and get rid of it, you can use a little paste of baking soda and water and just gently scrub that on with a little sponge or cloth and just kind of work at the stain that way. I also once had to use a Mr. Clean magic eraser on my wood cutting board, my butcher block. My daughter had drawn with a marker all the way around the edge of the butcher block, and it was pink. And washing got some of it, most of it, but it was still there, and so I had to use a Mr. Clean magic eraser to scrub at it. And then I oiled it and waxed it, I think 2 or 3 times after that happened, just to help, because the scrubbing will dry the wood out. So it just needed a little bit more love after that. This big cutting board with the ridges on it, we use to cut roasts and like ham and those kind of like bigger meat type things after they're cooked. And it kind of has a spot there that catches some of the juice and stuff. But I do find that cutting board, it has a lot of cut marks on it, and so I need to sand it down. So I am working on learning how to do that. And you can apparently sand down the cut marks with an 80 to 220 grit sandpaper, and just kind of work your way towards the finer sandpaper, and then give it lots of love with some oil and wax, and it should be as good as new again. When my husband went to carpentry school, he took a few years of carpentry school, and he made me this cutting board that I'm oiling right now. It is my oldest cutting board. It's older than when we moved into the house, so it's got to be closer to like 12 years old. It had a handle on both sides at one point in time, so the one handle broke off, but the other one's still there, and it's got these little feet on it so that it will like stand up off of a surface that you're cutting on. And then the large cutting board we got in the States probably about 10 years ago. The small one underneath of it was shortly after. And then the two in the back we got just recently, the last couple years. I think the one that says Hagee on it we got in 2020, and the charcuterie one we got just last year from my sister. So after I finished oiling those small cutting boards, I was checking out my island, and I was kind of like, it's really soaking in fast. It had been a while since I had oiled it, and so I decided to give it a second coat. And you can coat your cutting board or wood surface in oil as many times as you want. You're just going to want to wipe off the excess like when it's done soaking in, and you're going to want to make sure that it's on there evenly, because it will cause warping if you just do half of it and the other half is dry. Of course, as you do the multiple layers, you can use less oil because there's less of it to spread around. Like, it's not soaking in as fast. So you'll notice I didn't put on as much oil this time around. And so it doesn't take up as much oil for each layer. And then you're going to want to make sure you get the edges of your cutting boards and your butcher block. I also have the overhang on mine, and you'll notice when I did the first layer, I went underneath. I was wiping underneath, and so it's important to do that because it gets sun exposure. There's little grubby fingerprints, and it gets washed. And coating your cutting boards evenly on both sides also helps with warping, to help stop warping. And sun exposure can cause like cracking and wear and tear on your wood surface too. So it just helps to protect it and make sure everything's all good and healthy. Now, experts will recommend that you put wax on as soon as the oil has soaked in, but I live in a busy household with 4 children, and we just didn't have time that day. And so I am getting around to it. It's now a week later from those first clips, and here I am. I gotta clean the island off first because this becomes a bit of a dumping ground. That's the only problem with flat surfaces, is that you just end up putting things there and then it gets left there unless you take care of it. So I'm taking care of it, and then we're gonna get on to waxing this surface. So for a long time, I didn't understand the purpose of wax. I was oiling my wood cutting board, my butcher block island, but I wasn't waxing it. And then I found that wax actually helps to fill in the knife marks, the cut marks on your islands and your boards. That helps to protect against bacteria, as well as it makes the board a little bit more water resistant, which means you don't have to use as much oil because it'll go longer between oiling sessions. So then I was a big fan of it because it helps extend the life of the board and helps it look beautiful, and it saves me time because I don't have to oil it as much. When we built our house in 2014, 2015, I knew that I wanted stainless steel countertops around my kitchen, and so you can see where I have my dish rack, that stainless steel around there from the fridge all wraps around to where the stove is, and then to the side there. That's all stainless steel. And then the rest of my kitchen is butcher block. The island is just oiled, and then I have a bench in the dining room that's covered with clutter right now, but and then also a shelf that is just across from this island, and it's all butcher block, but the island is the only one that I have to oil. The other ones have a varnish finish on them because I didn't want to have to deal with trying to oil all of that, and this was the most important one to me because we were gonna be eating off of it. Well, yeah, basically eating off of it, and the other ones were more just for show, just to have things sitting on them, so they weren't more for food. The reason I went with the wood butcher block with the stainless steel was just to help bring some warmth into the kitchen, because the stainless steel is it's kind of cold and heartless, it's a very sterile type of finish, and so I felt like the butcher block was a nice complement to the stainless steel, and so that's why I wanted that. All right, here we are ready to start waxing the cutting board now. So I've got this Clark's cutting board wax that I'm going to be using. With the wax, I usually just use paper towel with it. With the oil, I actually had a baby bib that I was using. It was just a soft cloth that I keep just wrapped around the bottle, and I reuse that same bib to put the oil on. But for the wax, I find that I just don't want it on a cloth that I just keep around, so I just use paper towel. And that way I can just throw it away when it's done, and yeah. Now, the only bad part about using paper towel, especially for waxing the cutting boards that have a lot of cut marks in them, is that the paper towel starts to fall apart very easily. So just be on the lookout for that, and yeah, you might have to use a soft cloth or maybe a rag that you throw away after, whatever you're comfortable using. I recently learned that you can soften your wax, just a really quick little zap in the microwave, just to get it a little bit softer, and then it spreads a lot nicer and soaks in nicer. So I'm going to try that next time. I didn't do it this time when I am oiling or waxing it here in this clip, but I will in the future, and I will check back with you and let you know how that works out. To give you an idea of the size of this island, it's about 3.5 feet wide by 6 feet long. And I find that it's just the perfect size. I can still reach across it if I need to, but it's also big enough that 4 people could sit at it. So this means often when we have people over for company, for dinner and stuff, that our kids actually end up sitting here at the island, and that is it's just nice that we can fit, with our table we can fit 10 people. who can have a surface for them to eat. And our dining room's also big enough we can bring in another little side table for some more room. So we've had lots of family functions here in our kitchen that we are so grateful for. And the island is just kind of the center of all that. You know, your kitchen is the heart of your home. And I love having this beautiful cutting board. So depending on how often you use the surface is going to depend how often you need to oil it. For our island, we have to oil it once a month. But for the smaller cutting boards, I'm not using them all the time. And so they usually end up being every like 3 to 4 months before I have to oil them. Really, it comes down to your environment. If they are looking dry, then, go ahead and give it a little drink with some oil. You'll know it's dry if, like I said it earlier, if you dribble some water on there and the water soaks in, it's a little dry. If the water beads up on top of the surface, then it's good. It's probably good and sealed. So you can't do it any harm by oiling it again, but that's how you can gauge it and you don't waste any oil. Now let's talk about the bad part. If you have a board that is warped and it started to crack, then you need to probably get rid of it. The experts advise that you do not use cracked boards. My one that actually says Haggie's actually has a big crack on the back of it, but I only use it for cutting like loaves of bread and very rarely. It's more just for show. The reason is that the bacteria can get in there and you don't want to get sick from bacteria that's in your cutting board. So it's better just to let that one go. This spot on our island is, I believe it's clarinet oil from my daughter's clarinets. And you know what? It just gives us a little character. The other ones that you need to probably get rid of are any that have a mildew on them. It's almost impossible to get out, so it's probably better just to let those ones go that have that really bad water damage. And you can see those little mildew black spots on it. To avoid water damage, do not put cutting boards in your dishwasher. Don't lay them flat to dry. Instead, put them standing up or like leaning gently against something, and try so that both the flat sides of the cutting board can dry, and then it dries evenly. So there's a lot to say about wood cutting boards. We've been talking here for about 17 minutes now, and they are just absolutely beautiful. They're so much more interesting. They have character. They are just a little high maintenance and require some attention, but they're nothing to be scared of. And if you do maintenance on them, then they can last a very long time. Something else I just recently learned is that the wood cutting boards are gentler on your knife edges, so they can help preserve your knives. And I thought that was pretty cool. They're a pleasure to chop on. So I am curious, how many cutting boards do you own, and are any of them wood ones? Do you also have a wood butcher block island? Let me know in the comments. I would love to know who my fellow wood cutting board lovers are. When I wax my cutting boards, I find that if I rub quickly like I am right now, that it helps the wax really soak in a little bit better and spread more evenly. And just as a little reminder, whatever you decide to use on your cutting board, use it on both sides. So you oil and wax on both sides of your boards. This is all I can reach for my butcher block island, but on cutting boards, you oil both sides and the edges. And then if you do use bleach or lemon or any other kind of products, do a little test spot because it may cause some like discoloring or something, and you wouldn't want that on some of your really nice cutting boards and stuff that cost a lot of money. So just beware, follow manufacturer's guidelines if there are some, and just do your best. That's a wrap. We got her done. Here's the after effect. And the island is all waxed and beautiful, and now I can enjoy it for another month or two. Have a great day, guys. I will talk to you in the next video. Bye!